My name is Cecilia Robinson. I have got 3 children, a 12-year-old almost, an 8-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. And I am the co-founder and co-CEO of Tend Healthcare. So Tend is a health technology company. So we're a primary company, but we also build our own health technology. So we've got 25 clinics throughout New Zealand. We've got 130,000 patients. We have got almost 10 integrated clinics, and we've got about 500 staff throughout New Zealand. Well, so over the course of the last few years, I've become more and more familiar with the children's use of social media, and also in my work, I have significantly seen a change in Generation Z coming through versus prior generations. And so I think that I've started getting quite interested in the topic of what's changed, why are people presenting with anxiety. Inside Tend, we see a significant amount of mental health issues, and they can't be attributed to the things that people maybe have attributed them to in the past. Like, this isn't COVID, this isn't, global warming, this is not what's actually creating the anxiety that we're seeing in our young children. And I started doing quite a bit of research on it and found pretty quickly the link between social media, smartphones and children. And for me as a mother, having a 12-year-old going off to college, which he did earlier this year, I was immediately, confronted with the idea that he would need a phone because he's commuting an hour and a half every day. And it's important for us as parents to be able to keep communicating with him. But the idea was that we wouldn't get him a smartphone, we'd get him a dumb phone instead. So he literally has an old flip phone, Nokia, and a Garmin watch that he can communicate with us with. And so, I found that really interesting. And so as I started to understand more of it, I researched it more. I read The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, who is extraordinary. Like, if you haven't heard the podcast that he's done, if you haven't read his books, like, you should. In fact, I actually consider it a parental responsibility. And so you actually need to get familiarized with it if you haven't. And we need to change the way that we're accepting and being complacent around children with smartphones and social media today. It has to change. And it is parents' roles to change it as a starting point, but it will also become legislative over time, I believe. I think legislation is necessary because with other things where we've proven harm to our population and where the frontal lobe isn't well developed enough in our children to be able to do things like drive a car, smoke cigarettes, not good for your health, consent, alcohol, another good example. These are all similar things to social media and actually present in the same way in a lot of the social issues that we're seeing, and how it actually costs our taxpayers and our system actually money. So I think the system will itself realise that they will have to legislate because of the cost coming through from the burden of it will mean that health systems will need to make change and they will lobby governments to do it. We're just early in that thinking. And so that legislative change, I believe, will happen. I think giving your 12-year-old a smartphone is the same as giving them a car and just letting them drive around and driving on a big bridge and, going 100k an hour. Potentially it's even worse than that, right? And so I think it's very clear the evidence that we're now seeing and the impact it's having on our children. And it's really simple. We've got to make a difference. We have to change. Yeah, so it's not a campaign, but I'm just being really vocal with my voice and bringing together groups of people that can make a difference. And so I've got a little group going maybe, so it's a little mini campaign of people who have got a vested interest in the subject and who have got experience, skill sets, and have got far more exposure than I had to this. And so my objective is to make significant awareness. I'm asking people to read it. The Prime Minister needs to read the book, The Anxious Generation. The Finance Minister needs to read it. They all need to, because we need to actually understand the societal impact and the cost it will have to all of us as taxpayers. Set aside if you don't care about kids' well-being and mental health. If you actually just think about the pure financial aspect of this as a society, the cost it will have to us for the lack of productivity with our children, for the mental health burden, for the fact that we're not building resilient people, that will become exponential over time. We will have to be able to do intervention. So that's how I think about it, and those are the types of conversations I'm interested in having. Yeah, I think the social isolation is real. I think that, my son started at a new school and he couldn't figure out how everyone knew each other, but they'd all met through Snapchat. By the way, probably one of the worst platforms that you can allow your 11 and 12-year-old on. Seriously, not a good way for children to build relationships, right? And so I have got a very confident, emotionally resilient, almost 12-year-old son, and he copes with that. he's built really strong, healthy relationships with his friends at school. But no, he can't talk to them after school because he doesn't have their contact details. And I'd prefer it to be like a smartphone, that they change numbers with each other, they called each other, they actually learnt how to have a conversation on the phone, because guess what, Gen Z are coming through into roles inside corporates like Tend, and they don't know how to pick up the phone and call a patient to talk to them about an appointment that they have. They'd much rather message them, which can be done, because if you go back and forth 20 times via message, when you could just solve it through a 1-minute phone call, then you should make the call every time. So I think we're also not teaching our kids the social skills. So it is hard, there is social isolation, 100% that is part of this. And you as a parent have to be able to rise above that in a way and choose the fact that this is more important for your children. It's just the same as being the parent that's saying no for them going to that party that you don't feel comfortable with them going to. But at the same time, I'm really big on fostering independence with our kids. So like, we have sent our year 7 kid to the school that is furthest away from our house, where we live, just around all of the good prep schools just by our house, because I think it's better for him to go directly to the college rather than the prep school down the road. And that means him taking a bus, it means him walking by himself, it means that on a Wednesday he's going to be taking a bus to another bus from school to a completely different area and take himself to soccer practice, right? So I'm about building confidence and independence and giving them responsibility, but I don't think that you need a smartphone to do that. You can be effective in achieving that for other means as well, right? But yeah, the social isolation is absolutely real. It is real. And parents just have to choose where they want their child to land. Like, is it more important for them to not have that social isolation, or is it more important for them to have the phone? It's awesome. Like, I heard about you through my school because I had already emailed my principal about the fact that I was really interested in this as a topic, and that I'd written a few articles on it, and I asked her to distribute the book, The Anxious Generation, to the teachers at our school, and so that's how I saw it. And I think it's awesome. Like, we need people having conversations about it. I do think parental education is super important, and I think parents have a choice to be aware, but I also think that there will be a whole cohort of parents that will select this because you have the time and the energy to dedicate yourself to understanding this issue, and there'll be a whole cohort of parents who don't, and who can't take this conflict with their child and who don't want to remove a phone. And you have to be aware of both, and you don't want the children to become more privileged in this cohort because their parents have the ability to say no, and the children in a different cohort to become even more at risk because they don't. And so this could actually create a bigger divide than what we're currently seeing. And so that's why I think the rules have to apply to everyone. It's not that hard. So yeah, awesome work, love it, keep going. It's a significant burden on our health system, and this is where I think it's quite interesting, because I think you've got two things happening at the same time. You've got this movement in terms of the actual evidence demonstrating the fact that children are being impacted on this. It is negative. Social media and phones, we all know, if we look ourselves, I think it's a hard conversation for someone to try to deny the fact that their phone has impact on their life and that social media has impact on their life. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got the fact that this is actually costing our government and our healthcare systems a lot of money to resolve. Like, a lot of money to resolve. And so, the argument there is, if you hadn't given the child the phone in the first instance, would we be acquiring this cost in the healthcare system? And that's where I think actually it will come down to legislative change, because once the burden here becomes really visible, and once we start talking about it more, then those two things won't be able to be accepted. You can't just keep wearing that as a government when there are solutions to resolving that. But it will take a pretty brave government to actually mandate the fact that smartphones shouldn't be used under 16s.